Washington was dominated on both sides of the ball. It was an embarrassing performance because at one point, listen, they have more talent. The Eagles have more talent, but at some point, effort comes into it, honestly, and I just didn't see effort, especially on the line. The offensive line got dominated.
They're overmatched.
The defensive line also struggled as well, but not nearly as much as the offensive line. And you have 2nd and 1. You have to be able to convert that. And they just didn't. They missed blocks. They got just pushed around like rag dolls. And I know a lot of people want to sit here and say Dan Quinn shouldn't have gone for it on 4th down. Kick the field goal, take the lead. Two things here. I sat with it. At the moment, I kind of had that thought. Like, come on, just kick the field goal. Let's go. But first off, number one is that Dan Quinn has been aggressive all year long. Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury, they've gone for it on 4th down a number of times throughout the year. So, number one, you don't be, and also I think they saw what we were all sawing. We were lucky to be in that game at that point. To your point, Elliott had missed two field goals, the extra point. They should have been leading at that point anyway. And our line was just getting, again, dominated. And so I think they sort of felt like, listen, we haven't stopped them all game. We've been able to sort of slow them down a little bit in the red zone, and then Elliott's missed a couple of field goals, but we haven't stopped them really all game long. And we're getting worn down, physical team on a short week, and we're on the road. We need a touchdown here if we're going to get a shot to win this game. A field goal is not going to do it. There's still a ton of time left in the 4th quarter, and again, Hurts had been driving all game long. So I think it was the right call. You should be able to pick up 2 yards in over 3 downs, and they couldn't.
Yeah. Normally I'm 100th percentile aggressive, always want the coach to go for it, and usually I think the rule is if it's in question, then you go for it because there's just too much of a natural kind of leaning towards the conservative choice. Someone who needed the Eagles last night, I was happy that Quinn went for that because, one, they'd gotten stuffed on the previous 2 plays, but the main thing for me and the tiebreaker is Jake Elliott was having a nervous breakdown on national streaming service. Yeah. And I just felt like someone who needed the Eagles. I didn't think Jalen Hurts was playing that well. I thought Jake Elliott was just a basket case. And I was like, well, Saquon Barkley's going to have to run down and score a touchdown for the Eagles to win this game.
Make them try to kick,
and it just, I don't know. It was a strange game. Strange game from Jayden Daniels. I think the big takeaway of last night is the Eagles' defense just might be a top 5 unit in the NFL. It was absolutely awesome. No one has made Jayden Daniels look that human all season.
Well, Jalen Carter was dominant at the line of scrimmage. They didn't have an answer for him. It's funny to me, though, every time we talk about, not we, football media as a whole, we talk about was it the right decision to go for it, was it not? But we never criticize the play call.
Yeah. What was that? Yeah.
The play calling, I'm not just on 4th down, which that was weird, but on 3rd down as well. The Eagles didn't have a ton of answers for the short passing game, it felt like, to Jayden Daniels, and they kind of let them off the hook in that regard. I don't have a problem going for it. Ultimately, it's always the play calling that I'll blame.
I don't think that's
and Cliff's been really good.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think that's the play that cost them the game. Again, they're up 13-12. Are you saying that you think we shut them down the rest of the way? No. I don't know. I don't think they do. Again, their offensive line was just we were worn down. We were worn down defensively. We were worn down offensively. Just they're a better team than us. Like asked and answered. It's demoralizing, on some level, right? I mean, they beat the crap out of us.
But that's the difference of an organization that's had the same people in place that have been building that offensive line and replacing 1 or 2 parts each year for more than half a decade versus Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury. That this is they're going to build.
First year.
They're going to get that offensive line right. That's the difference right now.
Team 7-4. You still got 2 games against the Cowboys. You get to play the Titans, Saints, minus 600 to make the playoffs. Just the Eagles are just in a slightly different tier at the moment.
They certainly are. But I thought, I was feeling good about, I was feeling good about it at halftime. I was feeling good about it. I wish I'd taken the under. We talked about that. We talked about that yesterday, but my official bet was Commanders +4, which didn't cash. Your Zach Ertz bet did cash. Jalen Hurts under passing attempts.
By half an attempt.
Half an attempt.
While everybody on Twitter was celebrating because they got it at 28.5.
Right.
Obviously, when we tape the show, lines move. You make the bet.
Right,
27.5 did not because it was 28.
And I got it at 26.5 because I always take our bets. I always make sure
So it was really nuked by then. By it. It's just fun when you see everybody celebrating your bet that didn't cash.
Yeah.
Good times. Anyway.
Yeah, I was a very depressing loss as well. Kind of a wake-up check. I'll say this about, we're sort of all over the place here, but.
What else is new?
Jayden Daniels, it was, back-to-back bad fantasy performances by Jayden Daniels. And this is the first game where I thought he looked human. He against Pittsburgh, he couldn't run. but like he still made some unbelievable throws down the field, and a couple of bad drops hurt him in that. He had a couple of misses as well, but this one he just didn't look great, right? I think he made 2 pass attempts to wide receivers. Like it was all dump offs to like Eckler and short stuff to Ertz. Yep. Terry McLaurin got like 1 target, I think.
Yeah, we got to hear from Jayden Daniels after the game, specifically on that. The passing struggles, not really having that connection with Terry McLaurin. Take a listen to this.
Man, we got to execute. We haven't been executing how we were before at the beginning half of the season, so we got to go back and, like I said, look ourselves in the mirror. How can we get better? How can we keep improving? It's a long season, so it's going to be ups and downs, but how can we fight through adversity?
With Terry not being able to target him until the end, did you sense anything they were focusing on, or what was going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they had a little plan of, hey, let's limit 17 and stuff like that. So, we got to go back and watch the film and figure out ways how I could get Terry the ball, how we could get Terry the ball, because he's an explosive player, obviously, what he's done in this league and his resume. So we want to give our best players the ball as much as possible. So we'll figure out ways to move down the road and do that.
Terry McLaurin, just 2 targets, catches one of them for 10 yards. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell, the rookie defensive back for the Eagles, he was phenomenal in this game.
Yeah, Quinyon Island, just all season long he's been doing this, hasn't gotten as much attention. It felt like last night was really his breakout, where
Primetime,
just
division
to be
game.
like he's sticking with Terry McLaurin. He just took him out of the game. Like he's just shut off one side of the field. And I get that like Jared Verse is the defensive rookie of the year candidate. Jared Verse is awesome. And if he wins the award, it's no travesty whatsoever. But Quinyon Mitchell is the biggest reason, I think, why this Eagles defense went from one of the worst in the league last year to one of the best in the league this year. Every week he's taking the toughest assignment. He's shutting down guys like Jamar Chase, Mike Evans. Terry McLaurin was completely unsighted last night. Even Cliff Kingsbury had to move him over to the other side of the field to get him away from Quinyon Mitchell. And so Quinyon, he was the big story out of last night. And the Commanders, in terms of their receiving, I don't know, Matthew, it's like Jayden Daniels just not right still with the ribs, because he looked like he was still in a bit of pain, and just the throws weren't coming out right.
I mean, he was also under pressure a ton. Again, the offensive line just got absolutely dominant. You mentioned Jalen Carter. The entire line, I mean, Carter, it felt like they triple teamed Jalen Carter, didn't matter. Like it was just, and it also felt like, and I'm not an offensive line expert, but just it also felt like in addition to being dominated, the offensive line was constantly out of position. They were in the wrong position. They took the wrong angles.
Right.
It just felt like
run plays got blown up where it's at that point it just feels like the execution is wrong, right? I mean, blown up in the backfield.
Blown up in the backfield, and like again on that 4th and 2, yes, there was a bobble, but like if you go back and watch that, just like the offensive lineman just takes the wrong angle, and Jayden Daniels has to go a lot wider, and that allows the guys to come up and make this tackle before he gets there, and just anyway, very frustrating as well. I think there might be, I think he's probably more hurt than he said, because he's definitely looked
compromised.
He's looked compromised.
These 10 days will do him a world of good.
I think so. Certainly, hopefully, just not being constantly under pressure as well. But like we've said this before, like he's got Terry McLaurin, and that's it. Like Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler should not be your leading receivers. Like Eckler had a great game out of the backfield on just a bunch of dump offs. Zach Ertz, revenge game for Zach Ertz. But like, I mean, Zach Ertz was out of football. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that, like, credit to Zach Ertz for coming up being still productive in this league. But like, stop throwing to Diami Brown. Like every single week, there's like a bad drop by a Diami Brown. Like, stop throwing to him. Just stop throwing to Diami Brown. You're better off throwing it into the ground because the result's going to be the same. Like it's right. I mean, like it's brutal.
They really need that. Besides
they don't have another guy.
They need the second wide receiver. Like they need like the Devontae Smith kind of player.
Go sign T. Higgins this offseason or something.
Yeah, which they should. But I'm surprised. Like at the trade deadline, they made the deal for Lattimore, which could have used him last night too. But why didn't they make a deal for
Mike Williams would give them size?
Cortland Sutton. I mean, I know the Broncos are winning, but there were some guys that were out there, right?
Deontay Johnson, Deontay Johnson, who seemingly was an afterthought already.
They didn't want the tweets.
Exactly. Why don't we send a third for Jonathan Mingo?
Something to think about.
No.
I mean, despite how good the Eagles' front was, though, in fantasy, the running backs for the Commanders were productive. Brian Robinson gets the touchdown on top of 63 yards because he gets volume when he's healthy, which is great to see. And like you said, Matthew, Austin Eckler was king dump-off in this game. He even dropped one on 3rd down.
Yeah, that was a bad drop.
Still had a
needed
big
that
night.
one.
Yeah, that was tough, but still ends up with almost 18 fantasy points.
8 for 89 on 9 targets. It's his season high for points in a game in which Brian Robinson was active. very quietly, he's been fine. Double-digit fantasy points in 8 of 10 games so far this year. He led the team in catches and receiving yards last night. Season-high 28% target share. That's not ideal. That's not how they're going to want to use the offense. But Eckler is still very viable as a flex, especially when you look at Dallas and Tennessee, the next two up for the Commanders. Yeah, I mean, like, Brian Robinson was on my hate list. But if you read the write-up, and we talked about this yesterday on the Love Hate Show, like, there's always a chance Brian Robinson is going to fall into the end zone, right? They use him when they get in close, and there was certainly the case last night as well. I keep saying very quietly, but whatever. Brian Robinson has double-digit fantasy points in 7 of 8 games this season. He's got 7 rushing touchdowns so far this year. One of my bold predictions at the beginning of the year was double-digit touchdowns for Brian Robinson, that I think he might get to 12. He's at 7, and he's missed a lot of time. Like on a per-game basis, he's well above that pace. Speaking of rushing touchdowns, though, 7th straight game without a rushing touchdown for Jayden Daniels. He had 4 in the first 4 games. 2nd straight game with under 16 fantasy points. He's been under 20 in 4 of the past 5. Do you think, guys, that, and I'll start with you, Connor, has the league figured out? To me, it looks like he's not healthy and the line just got blown up yesterday. I mean, the last 2 playing against T.J. Watt in the Steelers line and then Jalen Carter in the Eagles line, both guys were just dominant. Both lines were dominant. Is it that, or is it just the league starting to catch up with him and he's starting to hit a bit of a rookie wall?
I think it could be both. I do think he looks physically compromised. Not where he can't be playing, and I think he didn't look that bad, but I think the Commanders were really running a quick passing game that can also widen the field with the running threat of him and the downfield running threat of Robinson. And now when you start to Quinion was really aggressive against Terry McLaurin last night. Like, you saw him in his face at the line of scrimmage. They're taking away more of the quick passing game, which usually leans on Daniels to run. If he's not 100%, the running's not the same. Yeah. This offense needs somebody that can stretch the field, where they can drop back and push the ball vertically, which can push the coverage back a little bit, lighten the boxes. I don't see that guy in this offense. I think they're hoping Diami Brown could do that sometimes. He can't. Eventually, you just don't have the bodies that these other teams have. He can stretch the field.
He's fast. He just can't catch it
when
it gets to him.
He's not threatening. Right, he's not threatening. So that's, to me, besides the offensive line, the number one thing this team needs is a vertical threat that kind of pushes the defense back. Right now, they're getting pressed up on, and they're playing teams with better team speed. The Eagles have team speed. Like, Jayden Daniels isn't going to go run for 50 yards against this Eagles front.
Yeah, I do think, though, that, like, the reality is he's probably a little bit hurt, and he just played the Steelers and Eagles defenses, and that's probably all there is to read into it. Thought he looked great against the Giants a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure he's going to look great against the Cowboys, Saints, Titans coming up. So wouldn't worry at all about Jayden Daniels. And even watching the game last night, it just became so clear that, like, I know that all these guys have pedigree. They're all heavily rated, but I think, like, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Jayden Daniels, what they give you in terms of the running back run game, like, it is still kind of underappreciated. There's just so much space for these guys, and every year they have super efficient offenses because of that running threat drawing a linebacker out of the box.
But that's the problem, right? Is that it wasn't there. It wasn't there against the Steelers, and it really wasn't there against the Eagles. He had 7 rushing attempts for 18 yards, right? I mean, it just felt like anytime. And this was a weird one too. Like, it just felt like the few times that he actually got into space and actually got past the line of scrimmage, it looked like he took the wrong angle a few times.
He hesitated a couple times too.
Yeah,
a couple dump offs that normally he would make, like going across the field, just didn't seem entirely
it was just like the duck and run. Like, and again, maybe that's him thinking, like, I don't want to take a hit to my ribs. Like, it is more hurt than you think. There was a lot of positives in this game. The problem is just almost none of them were on the Commander's side of the ball. Again, nice game for Zach Ertz, as we always say it. Death taxes, and you start your tight ends against the Eagles. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.